I got asked a question the other day. I was working with a company. I wasn't working with a company. I was doing a speech, and I was doing some Q&A at the end, and a guy asked me, how do you define character and how do you build it? And I'd actually never been asked this question before, and quite frankly, I hadn't really thought about it very much. And this guy had thought about it, and I talked to him afterwards, and it was something that it was why he really wanted to hear me talk, because he wanted to get my perspective on this. And I answered the question like this. I said, for me, character is not a very complex thing. For me, character is you do what's right. You do what's right. You do the right thing. That's what you do. And if you do the right thing, regardless of what the consequences are, that represents character. And so then how do you build character? It's a beautiful thing because it's the same thing. If you want to build character, you do the right thing. You do the right thing for yourself. You do the right thing for your family. You do the right thing for the people that you know. You do the right thing for your community. You do the right thing for your country. That's what you do. And now, on an individual level, those things are hard things often, right? If those are hard things, you have to make the right decisions. You have to live a disciplined life. Those build character, those little things that you do on a daily basis to make yourself better, to improve your health, to improve your situation in life. You're doing those things. They're hard to do. And when you do those things, they build your character. And ultimately, they lead to your character being a good character as opposed to a bad one. But I'd never been asked that question before, and I thought that the simplicity of it is pretty clear when you think about it. When you think about the people that when I think about the people that I worked for in the military or that worked for me, up or down the chain of command, what is it that made them people that, because there's bad character. We can't sit here and pretend like everybody that just because you're in the military you've got great character. That's absolutely not true. But what about those people? And I thought through this in 3 seconds as this guy asked me this question. I thought to myself, well, what about the guys that I know that have good character, that I look to and say, yeah, this person I trust, without question. What kind of person is that? That's the person that is going to do the right thing all the time, regardless of the consequences.
And a couple of things about that. First of all, it isn't easy. In fact, usually the right thing is the toughest thing. It's the hard decision. The second thing is, it doesn't always turn out for the best when you do the right thing. Lots of times we stumble, and your listeners may think that the three of us, have always, been on the top of the heap, but all three of us have fallen short. I'll tell you this, languishing in that prison camp, the first month in that prison camp, I laid there in blood and sweat and tears, and my mental state was just in the tank because I'd given up. Fighter pilots are not supposed to give up. Jim and I weren't trained to surrender. And the depression that I had just because of that. And I think that largely in life, when you do the right thing and it doesn't turn out right, then you have to get up, dust yourself off, get back in the fray, and that's tough to do. The last thing you want to do when you're getting beat up from every side and you really want to quit, the last thing you want to do is to stand up and be forceful again, to take control of the situation. And yet it's those kinds of challenges in life that build that character, that really make the difference between the positive life, the life lived well, and those guys and gals that don't make those kind of decisions.
And you're talking about when you were depressed, when you were laying there, it's because you felt like you had failed.
Right.
You felt like you had broken. You felt like you weren't the man that you thought you were. Mm-hmm. And they'd found your breaking point, and you'd found your breaking point, and you didn't like that.
Yep.
And what, if I remember correctly, what got you through that was, you broke down into one of your cellmates and said, well, this is horrible. I'm a disaster. I'm a failure. I broke. And he kind of said, oh yeah, welcome to the club. We all break. It was like one of those things.
Yep.
And I think, to your point, absolutely, everyone has a point where they go, I failed here. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I lacked the character that I needed at that time to be a good leader, or to even stand up and fight one more time. I failed. And the point is, us all sitting around at this table, and every single person that's listening to this right now, you can find a spot in your life where you said, you know what, I didn't do it. I didn't hold the line. My character broke, and I wasn't the person that I should have been at that moment. And that's absolutely true. But what's more important than the fact then that we all get to a point where we break is, number one, that everybody breaks, and number two, that doesn't mean it's over. That just means it's a bump in the road. It's a bump in the road, and you got to rebuild from it. You got to come back, and you can do that.
And not only that, but largely that bump in the road builds your character even further, because you understand your limitations and you understand that you can overcome these things. And, back to the story of the prisoners of war, 591 of us came home. And from that 591 men, we produced 17 generals and 6 admirals, and most of us retired as senior grade military officers. We went back to flying planes and commanding fleets and battalions all over the world. We have a bunch of congressmen, 2 United States senators, vice presidential candidate, presidential candidate, all from 591 guys. And we all felt like we'd failed. We all felt like we'd given up. But even because of that adversity, we came out stronger than ever before.
Yeah, I think this really goes also to the fact that, what you're saying is essentially the fact that you have to understand what your weaknesses are. You really do. And you have to understand human beings and what human beings' weaknesses are. And for me, and I've talked about this a ton on this podcast, you have to understand that human beings are capable of doing very dark and horrible things. Yep. And if you can't recognize that you yourself are capable of the dark and horrible things and of the weak things, well, then you're not really being truthful with yourself and with your existence really as a human being. And you ignore those things, and I think when you ignore those things, I think that's when they sneak up on you.
I think you're right. I think that's the crux of our real serious challenge with suicide within the veteran population. And I've worked on this, and Jim's worked on this, and you've worked on it as well. And one of the advantages we had as prisoners of war is that we exposed ourselves. We recognized our weakness, and to a man, we knew that we weren't as strong as we wanted to be. And so just that community that we built within the prison camp, tapping on walls and tugging on wires in our secret codes, very difficult to communicate with everybody else. But we had leadership there that turned that whole thing around. And the leadership said, wait a minute, you're not a victim. Now, I'm a very junior officer there. I'm a Lieutenant JG. Wait a minute. I'm in a communist prison camp. I am bleeding from 4 open wounds. I have no medical care. I'm starving. I've been tortured. I'm down to 115 pounds, and I'm not on the defensive. I'm not a victim. You pull up your big boy pants. Let's get on with this thing. We got a war to fight, and so the leadership totally they refocused the whole purpose of our being there, and gave us a mission. And I think that's one of the challenges we face when a guy gets out of the military, or a gal, and takes off that uniform. He loses the purpose. He loses that mission, and he loses that community. And he puts on a coat and tie, or puts on a golf shirt and goes out and tries to reconnect with people. And Jim, is what you were talking about, being in civilian clothes in Paris, and you were looking for some way to reconnect with your unit. And ironically, here they come marching down the Champs-Élysées to the Lido, and there you were back in uniform. and so you had raison d'être. You had a purpose, a reason to live, just because of the group that you were associated with.